Well, to quote a friend of mine,
kept you waiting, huh?
Yo, what is up guys, and welcome back to McAdie's Entertainment. I'm your host as always, Adam McGahee. I know it's seemingly been an eternity, but I'm finally back with part 2 of the new Marvel Zombies Red Band series that dropped this year. Now I had dropped part 1 a little while ago, which I will have linked below. And just like with part 1, this comic series has no digital releases at all. So once again, your boy has purchased the physical comic book and took pictures of every page with my phone to make this video. Don't say I don't love you, because I do. Now before we get into this guys, I just want to get this off my chest. I feel like this story has jumped off a cliff a bit. Part 1 started off super strong, but in this issue there were some really odd choices that I feel like have kind of dumbed the story down a bit. At least it's just to me, but you guys will see what I mean. Regardless, I've put the same amount of quality and care into this video just like my other ones, and have put it into one cinematic movie for you guys to enjoy. As always too, I wanted to let you guys know that our free 2-week superhero training plan is live. If you're looking to get in superhero shape this year, follow us on Instagram at McAdie's Fitness. I have the link to the program in my bio. It will give you a login to my app where you'll get access to the program. If you're interested in more advanced one-on-one personal training plans, feel free to shoot your boy a message with code SUPER. With that out of the way, let's get on to what you came here for, and that is part 2 of Marvel Zombies Red Band. The next issue opens with a flashback, prior to the events of the outbreak. Here we are taken to the X-Mansion. The good professor is introducing his fellow mutants to their newest classmate, this world's Jean Grey. Jean, delighted to be surrounded with others like her, is escorted to her room by Professor X and Cyclops. On their way, she tells Charles that she's been struggling lately. When she sleeps, she can't shut off her powers. Her mind keeps reaching out, listening. She's having nightmares, and is worried she may lose control. Charles goes to comfort the young woman. They all have their own demons they are battling, and at times they all feel like they're losing control. However, this is why they are here. Danger is part of their lives, and they are a family now. They will face it together. Later that night, Jean would go to get some rest. However, just like clockwork, her nightmares would return. She'd be teleported to a graveyard this time, where out of the dirt, a rotted hand would emerge. Here the woman would be swarmed by countless undead versions of the X-Men. They'd close in on her, where she'd scream in terror. She would plead for the monsters to leave her alone, where a zombie Cyclops would get within inches of her face. Jean would tell herself this wasn't real and that she needed to wake up. And just like that, she'd be back in her room. But this was no dream, as we'd see Scott truly was infected and was armed and ready to turn the young Jean into a midnight snack. Confused, the horrified woman would hold the man back with her powers, asking just what happened to him. Not listening to reason, all Scott could do was primarily lunge at the woman to dine on her flesh. At her wit's end, Jean knew he was too far gone. Apologizing, she then used her powers to blast the man's head clean off, leaving the once great X-Men Cyclops a lifeless husk on the mansion floor. Realizing that she truly was awake, Jean made her way out of her bloodied bedroom to see that this was only a fraction of this waking nightmare. All of the X-Men had been brutally killed, the walls painted crimson with their remains. All that was left of the noble Professor Xavier was his mangled and bloody wheelchair. Months later, after the fall of man, we see a group of zombies feeding upon one of their victims. Instantly, one of their heads would turn and snap on its own, where it would collapse to the ground dead. This was all the work of Jean. She was still alive. She had vowed never to be a killer, but desperate times called for desperate measures, and she was not about to let any more innocent children die on her watch. She would then be greeted by a voice behind her, saying that these monsters couldn't understand a word she was saying. Here we'd see a young woman with dark purplish hair jokingly saying that these creatures may have some brains left, but whoever they used to be was long gone. She'd then ask Jean just what was she doing on her side of the wall. Gray in turn would ask the woman just what was she doing here, where they both realized they were out trying to do the same thing, and that was to save anyone, just anyone who may still be alive. Seeing they were on the same side, the young woman introduced herself as Jewel, where Jean, high-key knowing this was an awful name, asked her if this was legit. Jewel then laughed, saying that she was in the process of dropping it, and her true name was something we as the audience were much more familiar with, and that was Jessica Jones. Making their way through the city, the women bonded over their experiences during this apocalypse, where they came across a familiar face, this being Spider-Man, who Jessica introduced as Randall. Jessica had been trying to guess the man's identity for quite some time, where Peter told her this was a terrible guess, and she was even colder than last time. However, Jean was quite familiar with Spider-Man. Peter had believed she may have recognized him from his TV show days, where in actuality, this Spider-Man had become a legend to the other survivors, as he had saved more people than all of the Avengers combined. Before their conversation could continue, Peter's spider sense would begin to go wild, noting that he had never felt anything quite like this. At first he thought maybe his powers were going haywire, but realized something was deeply wrong, and he needed to follow it to the source. And not letting Spidey go alone, the women followed him to this source, which ended up being a bizarre metallic structure in the middle of Central Park. Confused at just what this was, the group noted that it was some kind of highly advanced technology, far beyond that of their own. As they would approach, its doors would open, seemingly welcoming the heroes inside. The trio would cautiously make their way in, saying this did not even remotely resemble human engineering. And in the very next second, the heroes would vanish in a blinding flash of light, teleporting them to worlds unknown. Met with complete darkness, the gang would then be met with a mysterious voice.
I am from beyond. Slay your enemies, and your desires shall be yours.
Wondering just what that was, the team, especially Spider-Man, were shocked to see that they had been transported all the way to space, with Spider-Man even using a sentence enhancer, if you will, to address the severity of this situation. Being admonished for his language, Spider-Man and the team were then greeted by a group of familiar faces, which consisted of Captain America, Iron Man, Daredevil, She-Hulk, and what I'm guessing to be this world's version of Vision, who was using Ultron's body. Seeing that even the likes of Dr. Octopus were with Cap, Peter asked just what was going on. Steve then informed him that while they weren't entirely certain of everything, what they could surmise was that someone on a cosmic level power scale had trapped them all here. They were like galactic chess pieces on a giant board, and their only method of escape was to win. On the other side of this universe, we'd be taken to the Marvel Zombies, which consisted of the Fantastic Four from the previous issue. However, they now had some new members in the form of the villain group the Enforcers, Hobgoblin, Doctor Doom, and somehow even Hulk. You see, this is where I started not to like this issue. Literally just in the last one, Hulk was seemingly unable to become infected, and the story was shaping him up to be a main character, but then he gets infected off-panel in the very next issue. I mean, our boy deserves better than that, man. Come on! The zombie team would argue about who should be in charge, where Reed brought his brains to the debate and told them they had already taken down so many of the uninfected heroes, and it was starting to wear at their spirits. If they truly wanted to win this and get as much food as they desired, they were going to have to put their petty differences aside and work together as a team. Coming back to the non-infected heroes, they would strategize on just what to do next, and how they would even make it back home. Dr. Octopus would wonder why they would even want to return, given that their Earth was now a zombie-infested wasteland. Peter acted as the voice of reason, saying that they could not leave any survivors behind. Also taking note to the weirdness of this already weird situation, Spider-Man then asked the team if they had noticed that there were no stars in the sky. Iron Man informed him that they were indeed aware of this, and said that whatever this situation was, it was far bigger than they could even comprehend. Seeing that they had no other choice but to play this game, Captain America told the team that they were going to give it everything they could to win this and get back home to the people who needed them. Going forward, every last man and woman in this room was officially an Avenger. Over the course of the next several weeks, we'd see the heroes go to war with the zombies, where both sides would lose integral members. Ultron would obliterate the likes of Human Torch, and sadly Daredevil would become infected, thus sadly tapering the expectations of him being a major player that was also set up in issue 1. I mean, I know everyone can't live, but man, why you gotta play with my feelings like this? Even the likes of zombie Reed Richards would meet his end, where Doc Ock would hold him down, giving Captain America and Iron Man time to completely fry his body, much to Doc Ock's chagrin, as he wanted to test the guy's brain out to see who was truly smarter. One of the battle's greatest losses would come after Spider-Man failed to save Jean, who was taken by a horde, thus effectively ending all of this world's X-Men. Things would then be taken to the smoking ruins of a battleground. Here we'd see the remaining zombies. They would note they too had suffered devastating losses, but had to take their wins where they could. Hawkeye would note that the Beyonder was well aware of their successes, and had even been summoning towns of people for them to eat as rewards for their victories. Welcoming their newest member, we'd see the now fully zombified Daredevil. He'd tell the group that he had believed he had turned someone during their last fight, and that would have been his first. Seeing this as wonderful news to infect someone with their gift, Sue would then ask Matt who this was. This was then revealed to be Jean, as Captain America had managed to save her during this last scuffle and was rushing her injured body to the medical bay. As Otto would scan her, a rightfully furious Iron Man would then ask Cap just what was he thinking, as he had brought an infected right to them. Steve then tried to argue that she may not have been bitten, where Tony told the dude to get real. She was turning, and they all knew it. Cap knew this was the truth. However, he couldn't bear to lose yet another hero to this plague. Iron Man understood where the man was coming from, but if her sacrifice meant saving what was left of humanity, this would have to be the case. Finishing his scans, Otto told the team that it was too late. The disease had already infected Jean's cells, and she would arise as a zombie at any moment. She was the most powerful of them all, and they absolutely could not afford to have an undead version of her on their hands. They would need to dispose of her body immediately before the transformation was complete. The Doctor would then activate a casing around Jean. Ever since they had arrived here, he had gathered precious metals and alien technology around Battleworld to create just this. A machine that could fully incinerate one's body on a cellular level, even quoting the Spider-Man 2 movie, saying that he had the power of the sun in the palm of his hand. Spider-Man would then rush Otto, telling him this wasn't happening, where the man told him that they had no choice. They all wanted what was best for Jean. However, they could not allow her to become a monster. He was trying to do the right thing. Peter and Jessica Jones would argue with the heroes about how inhumane this was, where Otto wasted no time and activated the device, completely destroying Jean's body. Peter and Jessica would swear revenge on the Doctor for doing this, where Steve would try his best to calm everyone down. Otto would deeply apologize, but this was the only choice they had, and it needed to be done. However, things weren't over just yet, as a powerful wave of energy would erupt, sending all of the heroes to their knees. Jean, she was alive, but was now fully powered by the Phoenix Force. The secret war was just beginning, and was the first of many wars to come.